Justin is a very accomplished entrepreneur, having formerly founded Homestead, which was sold to Intuit. And I have the privilege of being on Justin's board, and I think what we were quite impressed with is just how systematic and analytical the Curious team is about how they identify customers for its marketplace of learning. So without any more ado, I'm just going to turn over to Justin.
Thank you, sir. All right. Let's see. I don't know if this is on. Ooh, how about that? Okay. Thanks, Mike. That was very kind of you. It's kind of weird for me to be presenting as if I'm a marketing expert because I've spent my whole career thinking I don't understand marketing and then hiring people who seem to understand marketing and then firing them eventually because it didn't seem like it was working. All the money we were spending never got into anything. And eventually, I guess I did assume the mantle reluctantly of a marketing CEO. I'm a software developer by trade and designer and kind of accidentally also became an entrepreneur. But over the years, developed some mechanisms that kind of made the math side of my brain comfortable with all the dollars that were going out the door to try to grow the business. And started putting some of that stuff down on paper. Finally found some people who kind of had like-minded philosophy about marketing. And so I kind of called acquisition marketing to be separated from brand marketing, which I do think is important. And then kind of when we were acquired by Intuit at Homestead, after took on some other businesses besides Homestead and took these techniques and got to practice on them with different businesses. That was the first time I'd ever tried to do marketing for a business that I hadn't built in my dorm room. And it mostly worked, and we changed some of the techniques a little bit, and then I ended up, once again, reluctantly becoming the chief growth officer at Intuit and running over $1 billion of revenue. And so that gave us way more chances to try these different techniques out and see if they worked. And actually, a lot of them did, some of them didn't. So I don't have a presentation, but I did. My wife's a teacher, and she made me buy her an iPad Pro, which I've never used before. And so she teaches this way. She actually uses the pencil, and she actually teaches over in right down the street in East Palo Alto in math. So I just thought, hey, maybe I'll try this. So I actually just last night scribbled some stuff down, and we're going to see how it goes. I've never done this before. But it's pretty cool. So I like to use whiteboards. This is kind of like using a whiteboard, but I already wrote some stuff down, and then I'll start scribbling. So I just kind of put 5 processes or important kind of things that I do with every business that I'm involved with over the years have sort of developed. They're very, very short and simple exercises. I actually thought we'd do one of them together. So in a second, I'm going to make you kind of get out a piece of paper and work along with me. The first one is positioning. There's a ton of different positioning exercises out there. You've probably all done some kind of market positioning before. I used to think it was a waste of time and not important until I saw a couple of times where we got it wrong and what a big deal it was to miss it and to kind of not understand who your market is and what your actual addressable market is and what is the value proposition that you have for them. So I've actually become a huge advocate of kind of value proposition understanding. Just like if usually the previous speaker said you got to have it right, you got to have the right product. I actually think you have to have the right value proposition. So it's a combination of the right product at the right price point and the right channel. Tesla at $1 million probably doesn't work, but at $100,000 it worked. For some reason, Prius at $30,000 really worked in certain markets and didn't work in others. But the electric car from GM did not work at all. So it's more than just the product. It's kind of a combination of it's the value proposition that you have. So I actually call this the Madlib positioning exercise, so I'll show you that in a second. Second thing is channels. When I was working with a couple of people I really respect and they're helping me with Homestead early on, this guy told me once the best piece of advice I ever got, and then he told me like 5 years ago he never told me this, and that I actually told him this, which I know is not true, and he claims he didn't say it, but it's the best advice I never got, I guess, which is don't build a product and then find a channel. Find a channel and then build your product. And kind of twisting it around, it's like you don't build something and then go figure out who the heck needs it. It's a solution looking for a problem. Go figure out the problem and then go solve it. And for my kind of problem-solving, mathematical, CS-style thinking, that really made sense to me a lot more than a lot of other marketing advice I'd heard. And then finally, I spent most of my time actually drawing this funnel that I draw all the time on whiteboards and try to help maybe think through your business in a little bit different way. It's very, very simple, but trying to identify exactly what are the right steps of a funnel and how to think about getting from step 1 to step 2 to step 3, and then I can share a couple of industry trends that I've gathered over the years about kind of some best practices and target numbers that you should be seeing in your funnel. Then there's another concept called marketing ratio, and marketing ratio is basically it's simply the amount of money you spend to acquire a customer, and most people call it CPA or CPC or SAC or something like that, divided by what we use first-year revenue, just not lifetime is impossible to calculate, so just look at first-year revenue. And that becomes a ratio, and then you can use that to measure all of your campaigns and tests against each other. I also stole that, by the way. I stole almost all this stuff from somebody else. And then finally, something we call agave, which is aggressive goals achieved via excellent execution. We made that up at Homestead back after the dot-com crash when we were really at the bottom of the dark valley of death, kind of walking through with all the other dot-com companies, and we decided we're gonna just rebuild this company as a subscription business company, one customer at a time. And we built up this process, and we empowered the entire company to be involved, and it was all about testing. And the last speaker was talking about that a lot. You have a testing rhythm that's really, really important. And so this is just one. Maybe you can take a few things away from that. Okay, so five of these little scribble slides here. So this is the audience participation part. I call it the positioning Madlib. So the words on the left and then the little italic statements make up a long phrase. So you could do this for your product, you could do this for your company, you could do this for your nonprofit, you could do this for a service, you could probably do this for your personal growth statement. You know, it's a little competitive maybe for your family. You could have each of your kids try to differentiate themselves from the other children in the family maybe. I haven't thought about that before, but I might try that tonight. I have 3 kids, and I put down 3 differential things here, so that'll be perfect. Okay, so here's how it works. You say, for your broad target market, who has some target characteristic, okay, the blank, which is their service or your product. Can you follow? You know what, I have a little pointer here. So I'm here. Can you see that up there? Okay, so for the broad target market, who has some target characteristic, the curious service offering, or the new company I want to start, or the new product that I'm building, is blank. That's your elevator pitch, okay, short description. That has one key benefit statement. So people love to write benefit statements, and I have people who write benefit statements, and it's like 3 pages long with bullet points, and I think the key of a benefit statement is, first of all, there should be one primary benefit, and then it should actually be a statement. That means it's like shorter than a sentence, not longer than a sentence. Okay, and this is my favorite part. You can find these templates, by the way. This is one that I've kind of customized myself, but you can find these out on the web. There's a ton of them, but very few of them have this unlike section, which I think is really important. So instead of having a list of benefit statements, the rest of your benefit statements have to get shoved into a comparative reference to some competitive set. Right, so this would be when my kids might come in. So my oldest kid might say, unlike my younger brother, I actually make my bed. Okay. So I'm going to show you the curious example in a second, but I want you to see it without it first. So unlike a company out there that a lot of people have told me over and over again is exactly what I'm doing, as anybody who started a company knows, you hear all the time, oh yeah, that's just like, that was just like, what's the company? It's just like Homestead. Homestead was doing that a long time ago. It drives entrepreneurs crazy. So unlike Homestead, our service is blank. Really works well on mobile, for example. Unlike expensive web developer, our service is affordably priced and never goes down, and you don't have to find the people. You don't have to try to find the people months later. Unlike Google's free service that every VC that I go to asks me about, we actually have real people over the age of 18 who work on developing it. So you could come up with anything you want. Okay, this is really fun, Madlib, and I would really encourage you, actually, right now, pull out a piece of paper, pick anything, get something in your head. It can be your relationship with your significant other. It can be your company, this great product that you have. It can be the company that you're actually working on. It could be GSV, Mike. Anything you have, and see if you can't do this, okay? And while you're doing that, I'm going to show you the one that we have currently for Curious. And by the way, Curious is a work in progress, and we've been changing this recently. And we're repositioning Curious now way more around mobile and way more around learning stuff every day, a little bit, 5, 15, 30 minutes a day, and we've made it into a game. So we're calling it the game of lifelong learning. So we're actually going through this exercise right now to try to figure out how to reposition it so it doesn't sound too trivial, but it also kind of gets some of the Lumosity market there, but it still has this really hardcore learning that Curious is built on top of. Okay, so maybe this will help you get your juices flowing. Okay, so here's the one for Curious. And I put the capital letters over here again so it reads a little bit better. So for lifelong learners who want to increase time spent learning new things in their busy lives, the Curious.com and the Curious app, sorry, Curious.com website and the Curious app, or just no the there, is an online and mobile learning game that helps players build their CQ, or Curious Quotient. Okay, and then I put a little bit of an extra part that's not in purple, but in 8 areas of knowledge: relationships, mind, body, music, aesthetics, STEM, humanities, work, and play. There, we've just like an entire statement of what our business does, and the elevator has not opened yet. Right? I'm still in the elevator. I got through it. Okay, now here's my more complicated positioning. Unlike video sharing sites like YouTube, you're probably all sitting there thinking, like, what is Curious? How's it compared to YouTube? Curious is designed specifically for learning. Okay? Curious is curated, interactive, and driven by recommendations based on learners' interests, all without the distraction of clutter of ads. Okay? Unlike in-person or group classes, so once again, that's an important positioning. Right now I'm saying we're like a free service, but we're better, but we're also like these super expensive services that you would go pay a ton of money to learn how to program or learn French or learn how to bake. Curious is incredibly affordable and convenient. Okay? Unlike brain training games, Curious isn't a silly game. So you can see, like, we got to pick the goalposts. That's the key of this exercise. And you're putting the benefit statements referenced against those things. So now people in your market, when you're talking to them, you have to figure out who you're talking to and how you're going to reference yourself against one of these things. Okay, so if you guys want to take just a couple minutes and try this out, don't feel like you have to do the whole thing, but just everybody pick at least a couple of those lines and spend a second on it, and I'll just ask for some suggestions. Let's see, who can I pick on? Danny, Sherry, you probably have this already figured out.
Yeah, you're not going to pick on me.
Come on.
No.
Come on.
Please don't.
Come on. What's the 4? You have a 4 for your business. It's easy.
All right.
Pay near me. 4.
Okay. For businesses or government agencies who need to collect from consumers with cash, the Pay Near Me service is the fastest, most efficient, and accurate mechanism for doing so. That
The benefit, you kind of already got it. You got the benefit already.
okay, great.
Yeah.
Unlike MoneyGram, Western Union, or Fiserv, our service is instantaneous and error-free. Unlike PayPal and other payment services, unbanked consumers can actually use it. I think that's sort of it.
Yeah. Okay, good. That was awesome. See? A round of applause for Danny. Okay.
Successfully avoided humiliation.
No, you did better than that. Okay, anyone else want to go? Give me a, I'd love to hear a differentiated benefit if somebody has one of those and that's been triggered. So does anyone think of a way to reframe their benefit that they talk about all the time against a competitive set? Anybody? I'll have to pick on somebody. Mark, how would you reposition GSV versus a traditional investment bank or venture capitalist?
I would say a much friendlier investor.
For sure.
I think a much curiosity, I think, taking
Yeah.
your thing, that you have a notion of really exploring and building businesses around great entrepreneurs.
Great. So, GSV is a great example because they're a public company. They kind of have an investment bank arm. They do some of those services. They're actually a VC. They have they're publicly traded, right? That'd be a great exercise to put those 3 posts out there because those are what people can tell what you are, and then to position yourself against those 3 things. And that's by saying what you're not, you're saying what you are. Yeah. So it's a powerful way to. Okay. Second thing, channel first mentality. I already gave you this quote: "Don't build a product and then find a channel and then build a product." Which I guess I get to ascribe to myself, even though I know for sure Kevin Harvey told me that. And I never liked the word channel. Like, I think channel is a stupid thing. I don't care what channels do, and I'm building products for people or for businesses, not for channels. And so it took me a long time to come to love channels. And what all channels are collections of people or businesses that are already at the trough for some other reason. So you just got to, instead of trying to put out a trough and try to get people to come eat from the trough, which is really hard, you just go find somebody else's trough and you stick your stuff in that trough, right? But you got to stick the stuff in the trough next to other stuff that people would find appetizing. So if you're not going to take your like toasted kale tofu wrap and put it at the ice cream store. Like, no one's going to sit at that trough at the ice cream store and eat your kale wrap. But you might take it and put it outside of Whole Foods or where the line's too long at lunchtime, and then stick your thing right outside of that. That's a good trough to be at. So finding the right trough and then putting your stuff there, and by the way, repositioning your stuff according to the trough you're next to is basically channel marketing, right? Smart channel marketing. Now, you can still build your own trough, and I think everybody wants to build their own trough because at the end of the day, if you build your own trough, you make your own rain. You make the whole thing happen, and you're not dependent on other people's troughs. But the best way to get your own trough going is to go find some others. And I mean, even the biggest businesses in the world still depend on other people's troughs, right? So even the Apple Store, when it was started, put themselves next to other stores. Think about where the Apple stores are, right? So that was the biggest brand in the world, most powerful, largest success right now. They're definitely making their own rain. They started kind of sucking up somebody else's rain. So you should all do that. I divide into 3 categories: free channels, paid channels, and partners. Everyone thinks free channels are the best. I don't think that's true. Free channels are kind of a hope and pray thing. Everybody likes to have free traffic, but free traffic tends to convert very badly a lot of times. It tends to not be coming with a purpose. They're I call them grazers as opposed to hunters. And grazers are really hard to convert. Hunters are really easy to convert. Right? Of course, free is great, and if you're doing everything right, free happens. So as you are successful in paid channels, the free stuff comes. And it usually comes because of what I call GOFWM, which is good old-fashioned word of mouth. And it doesn't matter if that spreads because somebody told somebody on the telephone, which some people actually still talk on the telephone, or an email, or of course through social. But it's all the same thing. And it drives me crazy when social marketing comes up as a topic. If you got to do more social marketing, how come you're not doing more social marketing? Social marketing is simply a new form of good old-fashioned word of mouth, right? You have to have a great product that people want to talk about. That's a great viral effect. It's way better to post something on your Facebook wall and have all your friends see it at the same time than have to pick up the phone and call them all one by one and happen to tell them about it. That's never going to happen. So for sure it's a better mechanism, but you can't just make it happen if your product is crappy. Like if people don't love using your product, they're not going to talk about it. So social can be a huge time sink. It's not the same as viral. Don't confuse the two. Viral is something you cannot control except by having an awesome product experience. You can do a ton of social marketing with a really crappy product, and you might have really great social marketing. Organic search was something that built Homestead. Really, Homestead was successful because of organic search. Is waning. I think it's changed a lot because of mobile, and it's because no one's figured out how to get the same impact and effect inside of a mobile search result. And if you think about it, how many times you're on the web, you go to Google and just start typing, versus how many times you're on your phone, you go to Google and start typing, as opposed to going to some app. You go to Yelp on your phone, but if you're on the web, you're going to type it in. So Yelp takes that search experience away. Now Yelp's losing that search experience, right? They're losing it to Facebook, losing it to Snapchat and others, but it's not just going to a text field to type into. So that's one observation. Paid channels, I think, are still the best way to count on a steady growth. Now, I should say all this. I should caveat all this. I've only really been successful in my life building subscription services or places where people pay money for things. So there's a whole other world of marketing where you're trying to arbitrage traffic and try to get, you try not to buy ads and show ads to somebody else, or you try to buy cheap ads and show expensive ads. And I have no expertise in that area. So I think some of the stuff may not apply. It's obviously very hard to pay for traffic when you're monetizing it with ads. But Facebook, Google. And then basically there's nobody else. So Facebook and Google are great paid channels, and it's really hard to find anybody else worth paying a penny to, in my experience. CPM is always hard to make work compared to CPC or CP something else. I'm assuming you guys know what CPM is. I'll talk about that more in a second. And broadcast is I don't know why more people don't talk about it. Broadcast really, really works. It's just expensive. It takes a lot of testing. It's hard to test, but it works. And then partners, people also love to come into board meetings and be like, partner with this person, partner with that one. How come you can't do that? And that's the concept of the trough. Go find someone else's trough. But the problem is the trough owners, that trough's not really for sale. Where unlike the other paid channels, the trough is totally for sale. The trough is not for sale with partners, or you have to, they're not stupid. So you can't just you can maybe trick some people at some point in letting you get into their trough, but eventually they'll figure it out. And then they'll either boot you out of the trough hole, or they'll charge you a bunch, or they'll kill your business. So I've had 2 out of 100 of my partnerships have been wildly successful, and 98 of them have been pretty bad in my experience. But the 2 were really great, and it helps build our businesses. But it's not as easy as it sounds. Okay, so now, sorry for all the talking. Those channels are what are going to fill into the funnel. Okay, so now I get to do my drawing. Except it's not supposed to be blank. Oh no. My app looks like it might be crashing. Okay, sorry, I'm going to plug it for 1 second and see if that fixes it. All right, we're going to restart this, dude. My wife didn't tell me that this happened to her. She has like 16 to 18-year-olds in front of her, so I'm sure they're more brutal than you guys are. Let's see if that works. Okay, let's try this again. Tell me it's going to be there. Okay, funnel. Because this is how I think about a funnel. I mean, I think everyone knows what a funnel is, right? Like you have people who have never heard of you before, and then they kind of hear about you, and then maybe they go somewhere that you've told them to go, and then maybe they give you a piece of information or an email address or a phone number. Then maybe you give them a trial. Then maybe you get them to pay for a little something, and then maybe you get them to pay for a big something. You're just whittling them down, and along the way, you're kind of discarding lots and lots of people. So here's the ways I name the funnel. You can pick any names you want. But once again, I've stolen these things kind of mercilessly from others. And I like to call people hand raisers who are just have taken some action. Okay, they've actually seen an ad and come to your site. They've clicked on an email. They've done something to come onto your turf. Okay, but that's all they've done. Normally, your website and your app. In my world of consumer stuff, it's one of those two places where you're kind of trying to drive them, but then you're also you might be doing CPC, you might be doing email to existing or other people's lists, you might be doing broadcast if you're lucky, and all these things can come either directly to one of those things, or often you're going to try to drive them to a landing page, which I'm sure you guys are all familiar with landing pages. The advantage being that if they come to a landing page, you now know which channel they came from, and you also can customize the messaging. Back to our positioning statement, it's really helpful to know if the people looking at you are comparing you to which of those three things they're comparing you to, you can tailor your message. And then what you want to do is have your first success metric, which is the first thing that you're trying as conversion. What can you convert them to? A hand raiser is hard to find again. You can't reach them again. What can you get them to do? And for a huge number of people, it's just going to be a sign-up, some kind of free sign-up. And usually, you're either going to get an email address or a phone number or a Facebook Connect out of them. And this is going to allow you now to have your first connection with them. And industry standards for that number are, I used to say 6 to 10%, but actually, we're curious, we're actually running 15% right now. So I think things are changing. People are more willing to give out email addresses and Facebook Connect. So that doesn't mean they're probably all less valuable because of that. But so 6 to 15%. What I'm going to do here is assume, we're going to look at what happens if we have 1,000 hand raisers. And as we go down the funnel, we're going to look at what that number turns into. Okay, so that means you're going to have between 60 and 150 people who make it into your next section. And these people are going to be what we call prospects. Okay, so the difference between prospect and hand raisers, you can contact them. Right? Hand raisers may actually be prospects, but if you can't find them and you don't know who they are, then they're not your prospect. Okay. And so then once again, you're going to try to do something that's going to try to get them to the next stage, and normally you're going to try to get them to go into a trial of your product or something which is a bigger commitment. Kind of like maybe a prospect is a first date, and then this next level is going to be like you've been dating for a while. All right, you might even be getting engaged. And so I usually call this a trial customer. And I'm a huge fan of using a credit card here as a validating effort, but that's a very controversial. There's like two worlds in Silicon Valley marketers. There's people who think this is the only way to go. It's called CCR marketing, and there's a bunch of other people who think it's crazy. Like, why would you throw a credit card in front and impede usage of your product? So I'll let you decide which one you are. You can use other things besides a credit card. You can also, by the way, you can build a credit card $1. You can take the credit card. You can tell them you're going to take a credit card in 7 days and not take a credit card, which is called no CCR trial. But you need to do something that's going to get them to commit. You could tell them you're going to send them an invoice, right? I mean, it's something where they're like, yeah, I'm going to pay in a little bit. And then they go into as a trial customer. Industry that I've seen is 10% is about the best you can do at the beginning, and you can get another 10% through what I call romancing. So because you've now got them, you can get 10% of them to give you a credit card right away and another 10% if you keep hitting up those prospects with the right offers. Okay, so you could actually accomplish this high of a 20% in this part of the funnel. So if we were to look at the low and the highs of that, that was in between 6 and 30 people who've made it that far. Okay. Now, you at some point actually collect money from them for delivering a service. We call that first bill through in my world. But once again, you could just think of it as like maybe you sold them something. So it could be first purchase. Okay, so if you're a retail experience, you just got them to buy the first thing. Okay, and so now we call those new customers. They're actually customers at this point because they've paid you for a service. And industry standard is 50 to 75%. Okay, so if you go to 50 to 75%, that means you're between 3 and 22-ish of those people, all the way from your 1,000. Okay, and then out the bottom of this funnel, your whole objective, which was to take these hand raisers, is to turn them into loyal customers. And the difference between a new customer and a loyal customer is a happy customer who wants to buy something else from you or keep. If your subscription service is really easy, you just keep billing them and they are happy. If it's a one-year billing, you might measure it as they billed you the second time at the end of the year. If it's a monthly thing, maybe you pick month 6. You pick some amount where you're like, that's the loyal customer. If it's a retail site, then you're like, well, you know, they've made 6 orders with us over a 2-month period. That's what we determine as a loyal customer. So you have to define some metric. And that's kind of where I'm going, which is that you get to create your own, and these boxes you have to fill out with what you think are the success metrics. And that's really the whole game. I'll put second bill through. If it were an annual service, then a second bill through is what we would use. And what you want this to be is greater than 50%. Okay, so now you've got 1.5 to 11 people who are now at the very bottom of your loyal customers. My wife taught me how to use the highlighter. Loyal customers. And look at the percentage, right? So I would actually look at this percentage here as if actually a new customer, and that would be your actual conversion percentage. And your conversion percentage here is between 0.3 and 2.2%. Okay? So if you're running a web service or anything, an app or anything where you're converting a paid customer at 1.5 to 2%, you're doing great. If you're under 0.5%, you're doing not so great. And so looking at it this way and figuring out where the problem is in your funnel is super important, because now you can figure out how to grow your business. If your percentages are off the charts and your business is barely making any money, then you don't have a bottom of the funnel problem. You have a top of the funnel problem. If your top of the funnel is coming in and you're just bleeding people and you can't get anybody to actually pay you, you have a middle of the funnel problem. And if you have people who are just burning and churning, they're paying you and then leaving, and it's like a revolving door, then you have a bottom of the funnel problem. So once you know where your problem is, then you can go out and attack it. And so, once you know it, you can start attacking it, and then you can start iterating using the agave process, which I'll talk about just quickly in a second. The last point on this slide is, once you know these numbers over here on the right-hand side, there's my little laser pointer. Once you know all these numbers, you can calculate all of your different CPAs, all right? And people use these terms really interchangeably. Now, CPM is just people paying you for impressions. I'm not going to talk about that. There's no hand raising going on there. There's no accountability for hand raising in a CPM. They're just putting the stuff out there and they don't care. So CPC or CPV, CP visit I prefer, is like getting the hand raiser to come. We call it a CPS, cost per sign up would be a prospect. For a trial customer, we call that a CPCC, and what I do, it cost per credit card, and then you'd have a CPA. Typically, people will use the CPA for whatever their actual acquisition target is, so that's it. And you can calculate all this simply by taking the cost that you paid for any channel and dividing it by the number of people who made it that far into your channel. Okay? Any questions on this stuff? This was my money slide where I did all the drawing. It looks pretty good, right? Yeah. Anything? Any comments? Yeah.
What's the worst problem to have? Because you said you can have it on top of the funnel, bottom, in the middle.
A crappy funnel is the worst problem to have, because if you have a funnel that from hand raiser to trial customer cannot work, you may not have a business. Okay, but if you have that part of it working, you can fix below the trial customer and you can fix above the hand raiser with dollars or with product innovations. But you can't. The middle part is value proposition. It's like, okay, now pay me for that thing I told you I was going to do, or now do the thing I need you to do for me. That's hard to fix. So I think that's the biggest problem. So you want, if I were to answer your question, I would say Like this part right there, that's the super important part. That's your business. Other questions? Yeah.
I wanted to ask you about broadcast because you mentioned you had some success there, but the challenge there is kind of measurement and tracking.
Yes.
So I think in this example, you're suggesting using some sort of like personalized landing page or promo code or something like that.
Yeah, which doesn't work. Yeah.
Yeah.
So actually, on the next slide, I'll talk a little bit more about how I would do testing, but it's really hard. You need to establish a baseline. There's two things. You can buy cheap broadcast in very localized areas and get some results, or if you want to do really big broadcast stuff in localized areas, it's really expensive. And so instead, what you do is you drop the entire ecosystem down to a baseline for a couple weeks, and you try to get a new baseline, and then you burst super hard for 2 weeks. And you hope that in the meantime, there's not like a 9/11 or something that causes everything to change. But as long as there's no external factors and you've established the baseline long enough, you can do that. Actually, that's what we did in Intuit, is that we were spending $100 million a year. That I just made everybody shut everything down for 2 weeks, and they didn't like that because it made them miss some of their goals, and they stopped getting so many free golf, outings with the people that they were buying ads from. But sorry, that's a little harsh. But we had to change the entire organization from being sort of 80s and 90s marketing mentality to the new world where you have to try to measure this stuff and justify it. And actually, 90% of the stuff that they were doing was not working at all. Seriously, like 90%. We cut 90% of the budget and zero of the, we cut zero of the effective programs. So we had a lot of money to play with to go back in and then make them effective, So, okay, any other questions on that? I know we're running late. Marketing ratio is a really simple concept. Which is, if you imagine that this is an average customer who goes through, let's say, a 2-month trial process, and then they pay you, all right, maybe if they were paying you monthly, it would look like this, all right, and they'd pay every time. Normally, because you have monthly, annual, all kinds of other ways of collecting, your curve is going to look like this, and it's going to flatten out over time, and then let's say your CPM are $40. Oh, wait, check this out. This is cool. I can draw like perfectly straight lines. See that? Woo. Okay, so that's your CPA. So what does that make this right here? That makes this your break-even point. Okay, and if you go down to 12 months, right here, that's your first year revenue. Right, so that's the amount of money that you made in the first year. And so what you want to do is have the difference between the height of this line and the height of this line at 1 year is going to be your marketing ratio. And in different businesses, your marketing ratio. At Intuit, we ran at $1. Our lifetime value was so great, we were running at 1. We were just like anything that's a 1 marketing ratio, we would just do it over and over and over again. That's before you take costs out of it. Right? That's revenue. That's gross revenue. That's not net revenue. That's not profit. So some people need more like 3 months. I would say rule of thumb for small companies I work with is 33%. It's just you should be able to recoup stuff in 33% of your first year revenue. Don't try to look at longer than that because it's just things change too fast. So marketing ratio is the way you measure all of these campaigns. And then once you have your marketing ratio, you can do this process, which we call aggressive goals, achieving excellent execution. But basically, you identify a few key success metrics. They're usually the little boxes in your funnel. Okay, so remember those little boxes we had? You just pick a few of those that are most important to you, like conversion rate from hand raiser to a prospect, for example, okay, in some specific channel. It's not, let's say it's not working well in organic search. And then you start iterating ideas, you form hypotheses, you create, I put a little, I don't know if you can see this, make it bigger. This is an example of just a simple one-page test profile. You give the name of the test, when you want it to launch, what the description is, what your hypothesis is with the reason to believe, what success metric you're aiming to move, and what you expect the increase on the success metric to be, and then up to 3 variants, usually a control and 1 or 2 variants. And then most importantly, what happens if it works? Because you're going to take some little piece of your channel and do it. If you can't scale it, don't do it. Actually, that's a good thing with broadcast a lot. You can't scale it. You can get KQED and, to do something great in their fundraising drive. It's totally useless unless you have 100 or 1,000 fundraising drives that you can easily replicate. And broadcast has that problem. So anyway, I'm happy to take more questions on this. Then you build a queue of tests, and the key that really works well is you let everybody in the company, not just the CEO or the executive team, come up with the tests and ideate on those tests. But the boss gets to choose which test gets resourced. But they don't get in the order of the queue, but they don't get to declare a test a winner. Only the numbers get to declare a test a winner. Or 0. Nothing? All right.